Okay, let's do some camera animation. We'll select our camera up here. And if we check the lock, the camera will move whenever we change the view in here. So let's find a good spot to start. So our first point of view. I like it when the camera is close to the ground. And we can do a little bit wider. So we can do something like this. So the camera will start in this position. So we want to go to the first frame. And we'll alt-click rotation and translate. And then what I'd like is that the camera moves or dollies to the back. So we can go to the last frame. And we can change the Z value over here. Or we can just scroll the wheel to go back. And then this will be our final position. So alt-click again. And let's play this. Okay, so this is pretty cool. We want to follow the ship when it emerges from the ground. So we'll do some X rotation. So maybe on frame 95, we will rotate the X to somewhere around here, and we'll only keyframe the rotation. So alt-click. And then on the final frame, we also want to change our X rotation. So if we change it to 90, we'll be looking straight up, which is more realistic, I think. So let's play this. So ship comes up, we follow it, and then it flies away. Okay, that's pretty cool. It's a very robotic movement right now because we start tilting up even before it moves upwards. So I'd like to add another keyframe around maybe frame 35. I will just change this back to 0. So we don't start tilting upwards right away. Oops, I don't need to change it to 0 because we were already at 8.5. So I will make it 8.5 on frame 35 so that we have the same as frame 1. Yeah. Okay, we have a lot of dead space here, but we'll need the room later, so we can just leave it like this. Okay, I'd like the camera to be a little bit higher. So go to the first frame. I will change the Y position. We were on 0.5. I'm gonna do 1.25, and I will also do that on the final frame. 1.25. So the camera is a bit higher. Yeah, I like this. Now let's also spend some time fine-tuning the ship animation. So it has to fly away at frame 100 a little bit faster. It's a little slow right now, so it has to exit a little faster. And I'd also like it to emerge a little bit slower. And also make it have some problems when emerging. So maybe wiggle it a bit. You know, make it seem like it has to go through a lot of sand and debris to finally emerge from the ground. So I'm gonna spend a little bit time adjusting those settings. Okay, so I spent some time fine-tuning the ship animation. It wiggles a little bit when it comes out, and then it flies. It goes a little bit less high as well, and then it flies away faster. So the flying away faster, I just changed the Z space to 125, which was 100. Yeah, I added some more keyframes before frame 100, so I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 extra keyframes for the wiggle. I also fiddled around a little bit when shift clicking the keyframes here. You get this graph. Let's go to the graph. So I fiddled a little bit around with these settings because the keyframes were a little bit too close together, so we would get some unnatural movements. So I spaced them out a bit and then flattened the curves a little bit. And this is a little bit fiddly to work with, but it kind of works. And when you, for instance, want to edit the place where the keyframe is at, so for instance, the keyframe on 49, I want it at 53 or something. You just select the keyframes here and you control click, and then you can move them in time. You can also see it down below in the timeline. You can see the green dot moving. Okay. What I also changed was some camera keyframes. So remember when I rotated the camera 90 degrees upwards, I also did it on frame 175. So we follow the ship a little bit faster, so we see more of it before it leaves. And 95, I made sure we see some more ground because the grains are gonna fall off here and the rocks. So it's gonna be cool if we have some more room beneath the ship. Okay, so for our environment light, we just click environment light in lights and camera, control click, and it will create this node for us. And inside here, we can choose our environment map. So you can pick whatever HDRI you want, but we're basically gonna create a moody Iceland scene. So it's gonna be a bit dark. There isn't gonna be much sunlight. And I've looked around the web for a free HDRI of Iceland, but I couldn't find one. There were only a couple ones and they were really expensive, like 60 euros a piece. So I just have to make sure to make one next time I'm in Iceland. There are a couple of sites where you can find free HDRIs, like HDRI Haven. You can browse through them here. And you can pick whatever you want. So we just want to find something close to what we're creating. There's also hdrlabs.com. And I thought the Ice Lake one was pretty cool. So I'm just gonna go ahead and use the Ice Lake one. So inside Houdini, in the environment map, we'll load that file. So I have it in my own directory here. So Ice Lake map, iRes, accept. And then we have our environment light. So let's see what that looks like. So in the out, let's create a mantra node. Like so. Oh, there it is. And then in the render view, let's select our camera, mantra, and let's render this. Okay, this is looking really cool. And most of the time, environment lights and HDRIs give a really realistic result right off the bat, so that's cool. One more thing I did is I changed the camera in the mantra out node to our camera. It defaults to cam 1. So I changed that, and I also re-added the material to our ground plane. So I just wanted to get a feel for what the scene is going to look like. So a good habit is to always take a snapshot every time you look at a new render. So you can always go back to it later and compare your renders side by side. So another thing we are going to look at is our environment map rotation. So we can change the direction of the light by transforming or rotating on the y-axis. So I can show you this in our scene view. We go to our scene view, and in our display options, we can go to the background and display environment light as the background. like this. And now we can rotate this. We're just rotating the dome around our scene, and this way we can change the direction of the light. I just like to have the light coming from the left corner of the frame instead of the right. So I'm gonna make this 100. And yeah, that looks better to me. So now let's just render this and compare it to what we had last. So a general rule in filmmaking is to have your light hit the subject you're filming off camera. And since this ship is passing us on the left, we have our main light source also on the left. As you can see, this is what we had last, so we had our light coming from the right-ish. So I think this is better. And we can always change it later, and we can change the intensity and the exposure. So we have a lot of options. Okay, let's go back to let's take a snapshot. Let's go back to the scene view. Go back to camera on. I'm gonna disable the environment map like this. And let's start cleaning up this mess we made. And the way you can group things together nicely is to select them and then click here on the network box. And this will create a neat box around it. And you can rename the box. So you can say camera and lights, camera and lights box. And you can also give it a color. So C for color palette, select the box and then say yellow, for instance. So I'm gonna do that to all of this and I'll see you back in a minute. Okay, so I have my ship geo here, ship, I have camera lights, and here I have my sources. So I also put the ground plane in here because we will use this as our ground source in our simulations. So this will be our collider. The grain source is in here. We have our sims, and we're gonna add the rock sim to this later. And here we have our import geo, so for rendering. This is where we're gonna cache our sims. And on the left we have our scene assets. And this is gonna be a little bit of a longer list since we're gonna copy and duplicate these rocks to fill up the scene.